Jason Canigan, the founder of the Make Space Boring event and this thing called Star Technologies. We're a data science and process improvement company, which is why I wanted Joseph Paris to speak at the event. He was a guest on my podcast, The Cold Star Project, and I read his book. I took 3 pages of notes from State of Readiness, so took it very seriously. He opened my eyes about the strategic level that operational excellence could be applied at. That was a brand new thing to this guy who's been a 20-year operations management process improvement guy. So this is JP's presentation. He's got some slides. We had a wonderful discussion. There was a Q&A. And this is a presentation or a virtual event for space folks. The space industry is extremely dependent on conferences. And because of the whole COVID thing, all those things got canceled, right? You could see it. Boom, 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 cancel, 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 cancel. And I went, I better put on some virtual conference so that people can go and see, on one hand, their heroes, and also folks like JP who the space industry really needs. I mean, these are high-tech, smart people, but they don't know nothing about operational excellence, okay? And I'll get some pushback on that. But really, when it comes down to what he is talking about, no. They need to hear this. So this is a new topic for them. They were really excited. I got some on my other screen here, some great feedback that people wanted to hear more from him. And also, even during my presentation, he popped in with a few great comments that everyone enjoyed. So without further ado, here is JP's commentary.
So Joseph Paris is Operational Excellence Society. So say operational excellence, and you'll probably conjure a vision of a fast, efficient production. But for Joseph, operational excellence is much more than just that. And when properly employed, brings your space organization to a powerfully alert state of problem anticipation and solving. So Joseph, we're looking forward to hear from you. And as always, to all the people who just joined us, please feel free to ask questions in the Q&A section, and we'll get to those at the end.
Thank you very much for that. To me, operational excellence is about organizational design. How does a company work better as a company? So I want to walk you through a couple of things. And to become a high performance organization, I can't teach you that in 20 minutes. So I just want to put that caveat out there. It takes a lot of work. There's no pill you can take or button you can push to make it happen faster. It's a lot of hard work. But I'm going to show you a couple little items that might be of use to you. So let's see here. Share the screen. I hope that's coming through for everybody. We're going to talk about a state of readiness, a little bit about me. I do a lot of things, so I'm not going to go too deep into it. Everybody will have a copy of this, I believe, afterwards. But I have a couple of platforms. Xonitek is my consultancy. The OpEx Society is a think tank that I founded. I founded the Readiness Institute, which is a education and training platform for people that want to become higher performing organizations. And I have a fairly large footprint. I've also written and released a book called State of Readiness. It was endorsed by senior leaders of some of the most well-known and respected companies in the world. In fact, the foreword is written by Andrew Lambert, who's the vice president of production at SpaceX. And we're going to talk about a state of readiness, becoming the high-performance organization. And I think that we could all recognize presently that we live in a VUCA world. And what does a VUCA world mean? VUCA, V, stands for volatility. It's unstable. It's unpredictable. U is uncertainty. There's gaps in the information available, and we're having a difficult time deciphering what decisions to make from those gaps in that information. There's complexity. I mean, you think about the COVID-19 calamity and pandemic that we're enduring right now. It's a very, very complex problem. And, there's no one thing that's going to solve it. It's going to take a concerted effort from a bunch of disconnected resources. And there's ambiguity. There's causal relationships that are unclear. So this is the world that we live in. And of course, nobody knows that better than if we boil that down to the industry level and down to the company level. Nobody knows that more than those people that explore and pursue engagements in space. I mean, you think about the Apollo program. I'm old enough to remember it. And I think about all the things that they had to do to get a man to the moon and return him safely back to Earth. I mean, so you think about that. So living in a VUCA world, our agenda is operational excellence, the why, the what. And I'm going to wrap it up with giving you one thing to take away with is lessons from Mount Stupid. So we talked about volatility and uncertainty and complexity and ambiguity. And if you think about, as I was mentioning, that from the Earth to the moon and back again, they had to practice docking. They did it once, and then they moved on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And they didn't become proficient at any of it. If they did it once successfully, that was good enough. And they moved on and they moved on and they moved on. Very, very different than, say, the medical industry or the automotive industry. Space is about risk. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The only thing that you could do is mitigate that risk. And so if you think about, the competitive advantage, the why operational excellence. You think about the competitive advantage. People think that the competition is another country or another company, but really, time is our competition. We're competing against time. Time is the enemy of the 21st century company. So I would propose that the company that could see further beyond the horizon, or the organization that could see further beyond the horizon and recognize opportunities and threats sooner and can devise and deploy decisive responses faster, this is the company or organization that's going to have the competitive advantage. And we have to also be able to understand what is available, what resources and what talents do we have at our disposal, and what resources and talents are not at our disposal, or at our disposal but otherwise allocated. Just because we have it, we might not be able to use it because it might not be available. So these are all variables in our decision-making processes. And I would probably hypothesize or propose to you, how much data do you have to collect and analyze in order to absolutely guarantee an outcome? You think about that. How much data do you have to collect and analyze to absolutely guarantee an outcome? And the ultimate answer is going to be an infinite amount of data and an infinite amount of analysis. So ultimately, we make decisions when our level of confidence exceeds our level of fear. You think about it. Every decision we make, therefore, is a bet. It's a wager. And the more we know about what we can and cannot do, the fewer unknown unknowns there are, the more confidence we can build. And ultimately, somebody's going to make the decision that, yes, I'm got a level of confidence that this decision is sound. So if you think about what operational excellence is, most of the descriptions or definitions I have seen are more of descriptions. They tell you what it looks like, but they don't tell you what it is. And I worked, believe it or not, I worked about 5 years on this particular definition, which ultimately ended up as the basis of my book. And I say that operational excellence is a state of readiness. No coincidence that is the name of my book. And it's when the state of readiness is attained as the efforts throughout the enterprise. So you think about throughout the enterprise. It's not about production. It's not about execution. It's not about design or development or sales or marketing. It's about the entirety of the enterprise. Reach a state of alignment for pursuing its strategies. What is the strategy? What is that 3 or 5 year goal? Do the people know? There's an anecdote about JFK going to Cape Canaveral and asking a maintenance person, what he was doing, and the maintenance person said that he's sending a man to the moon. This is a crystal clear vision that everybody can align towards, and it's where the corporate culture is committed. I mean, this is not something that we have to even think about. This is just the way the corporate culture is, or the organizational culture is committed to the continuous and deliberate. So you think about not just continuous, in motion and one after another, but deliberate. In other words, it's in an engineered manner. It's in a deliberate manner. It's purposeful. Improvement of the company performance. So the improvement of the company performance is not necessarily profitability. It's how well is this company executing on its plan. And it's the circumstances of those who work there. not what we think is important to them, but what they think is important to them. Is it health? Is it safety? Is it benefits? Is it stability? Is it the opportunities for advancement? The circumstances of those who work there, and it's a precursor to becoming a high-performing organization. So if I were to read this whole thing out, operational excellence is a state of readiness, is attained as efforts throughout the enterprise reach a state of alignment for pursuing its strategies where the corporate culture is committed to the continuous and deliberate improvement of company performance and the circumstances of those who work there as precursor to becoming the high-performance organization. So if I think about the entirety of the organization, and most companies are going to be somewhere in the value chain in the space program. They're going to be a vendor, they're going to be a supplier, they're going to be an advisor. There's very few companies, in fact, that are the end items, the end producers, SpaceX being one of them, NASA being another one, of course. So what we need to do is we need to be able to accelerate the decision-making process, not just by optimizing our processes vertically, but integrating our organizations horizontally, binding the organization, working better as an organization. So instead of being a golfer, you're more of an NFL football team, or for us, for Europeans, soccer or football, Europeans football. Each person has a role, each person has a talent, each person has an expertise, but each person understands what each of the other players are capable of doing, as well as what their opponents are likely to do, and are able to work as a unit on the field. So the operational, what defined? You think about the Empire State Building. Okay, think about this. I mean, this is a long time ago, right? 1929. You think about it. From the day that the first shovel was put into the ground. Now think about 1929, though. This is before highways. Highways don't exist. Steam rail exists. The Erie Canal is up and operational. All right. The steel that was used in the Empire State Building came from Bethlehem and Pittsburgh, up to 600 miles away. Again, no highways. You think about the Indiana block. Guess where the Indiana block came from for the exterior? Indiana, which is some 1,200 miles away. This thing was built in the middle of Manhattan in 1929. You think about all the material that came here. We know that all the material for this building didn't come on site on one day and was consumed. I mean, the logistics involved in the building of this building is incredible, considering 1929 approaches and methodologies. But from start to finish, from the moment the first shovel was put in the ground to the moment they opened up the doors, was only 464 days. That's 1 year, 3 months, and 9 days. Now contemplate that for a second. I mean, how long did it take to build the Freedom Tower? I know of a rest stop near where I used to live in upstate New York. It took 3 years to build it. A parking lot and 2 bathrooms. It took them 3 years to build it. All right. You think about the original space program, the Apollo program. From having nobody in space to having a man on the moon and return safely back to Earth was a decade. Inventing things that weren't even invented yet. Approaches, materials, all of that stuff done in the compressed time of less than a decade. If you think about this, you think about operational excellence. These people had their eye on the ball. They had their ambition. They had their drive. They also had their challenges. In the Empire State Building, 3 deaths. There was only 3 deaths. I mean, people think that others were falling out of the building, every day. But from start to finish, there was only 3 deaths. And I say only 3 because, believe it or not, per million square feet of construction, that's still about the average. So we haven't improved that much safety-wise, in the span of darn near 100 years. But we don't know what we don't know. The lack of imagination, the lack of experience, is what the real challenge is going to be. And it's not until we face those challenges and react and engage those challenges that we can overcome those challenges. So the one takeaway I want to give you here is what I affectionately call in my book, Lessons from Mount Stupid. And the conversation goes something like this. Leadership says, we need to drive another 5% EBITDA over the next year. Can you do it? Or we need to do this, or we need to, accomplish some, big, fat, hairy goal. And, of course, we want to say, sure, it can be done. Because, we look at it, we're learned people, we're capable, we're professionals, and we look at what the request is, and we say, yes, I can certainly say it could be done. And leadership will say, shoot, super, what do you need? And we'll say, of course, resources, budget, and time. And the leadership will say, there isn't any of that, can you still do it? And, we'll, of course, say, we can try. And leadership is not satisfied with trying. They want to know that it could be done. So, if, we're not able to do it, he's going to give it to Smith to do. And, of course, we'll get it on it right away. Welcome to Mount Stupid. This is a perilous conversation on many, many levels. First off, leadership has asked if you can do it, and you said you can do it. Okay, you can accomplish it. And in your heart of hearts, you can absolutely do it. And they ask you what you need, and you tell them what you need, and they tell you it's not available, but you commit to doing it anyway. Now, this is a gigantic problem for you personally and professionally for as long as you're going to be with that company. Because no matter what they ask you to do in the future, they know whatever you ask for, they're going to give you pushback and you're going to crumble. But more than likely, what's going to happen is that you're going to fail. You're just going to fail. I'm going to assume that everybody who would commit to this is going to say truly and honestly that they need these things. And when they commit to doing it without getting what they need to accomplish it, they're setting themselves up for failure. So what does Mount Stupid look like? Well, it's derived from Dunning-Kruger effect. David Dunning and Justin Kruger at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, developed it. And it's actually a derivative of both the Hegelian dialect from William Hegel, philosopher in I think it was the 1600s, maybe 1700s. And it's also, you'll recognize this as the Gartner hype curve. So it looks like this, on the horizontal axes, we have the know-nothings, on the left, and we have gurus on the right, and that's the wisdom axes. And I define wisdom as having knowledge plus experience. And on the vertical, we have confidence from low to high. And the curve looks like this, and like I said, most of you will recognize it as the Gartner hype curve, but it's actually a variant of the Hegelian dialectic. And at any program, at the beginning of any endeavor, and I'm going to tie this back actually right now to the COVID-19 pandemic, because we're living it right now and everybody can relate to it readily. We have a launch, we have a start of something. And when we have a start of something, we believe that we can see the end in mind. Keep the end in mind. We know what it looks like, or we feel we know what it looks like. We know how to handle it. And we go and start executing along our way. But what happens is that we don't know what we don't know. Donald Rumsfeld famously said that during the Gulf War, and he was ridiculed for it. But there is a lot of unknown unknowns. Nobody knows this more than people in the space program. There are unknown unknowns that are only waiting to be discovered and or cause peril and even doom. Eventually, though, if we continue on a path beyond, and we don't see the signs, and we continue on this path beyond our gut guidance saying we're doing something wrong, we're eventually going to reach the peak of Mount Stupid. At the peak of Mount Stupid, it's irrefutably obvious that whatever course of action that we took, we had absolutely no clue what we were doing, and we have faced doom. This is the point where people get fired, businesses go out of business. We are living it right now, or I believe we're past it now, where we didn't think, for instance, in the United States, that it was going to reach our shores, and if it did, it wasn't going to be a big deal. The Europeans were slow, even though the Italians were suffering, tremendous losses in reacting. So, we each sequentially reached our respective peaks of Mount Stupid. And this is where we fall off the cliff. This is the program termination zone. This is where, we decide that, it was folly to try to go to the moon because Apollo 1, the capsule of Apollo 1 burned on the pad. We should give it up. Now, this is a Waterloo moment where we question our very existence and whether or not what it is that we're trying to do is even worth continuing the pursuit. And at the bottom, we reach what we call the Valley of Despair. This is where we are at the lowest point of our lows, and this is where we say, am I going to learn from my experiences and try again with this new wisdom that I've gained, or am I going to give it all up and move to Sedona and sell spirit stones? Well, let's assume that you're not going to move to Sedona and sell spirit stones, and you decide to take this newfound wisdom and give it another go. So I call that the slope of enlightenment. This is where you're now learned, you're much more cerebral, you understand what it is that you don't know is quite a bit, but at the same time, you understand that every day you learn more. So it's kind of a contrarian view. Every day you learn more and more and more, but every day you realize you know less and less and less. And then we reach the plateau of sustainability. This is where we understand we're in the groove. We understand what we don't know. We understand that we need to ask questions. We need to reach out. I know there's a lot of smart people on this podcast and this recording. A lot of my fellow panelists, are very, very smart in their own right. So maybe this isn't necessarily appropriate for them, but I believe that I'm not going to invent anything new. Okay, everything I need is around me. All I have to do is reach for it. And I'm going to give you a little story. We had a programming project some years ago. My firm did some code cutting. This is about 20 years ago. And one of my programmers was having a particular challenge on cutting some code, getting the results he needed. And the client was getting anxious. And I asked him, I said, listen, the client's getting anxious. Why don't you post your challenge out on one of those, internet bulletin boards and maybe you'll get some eyes on. He's like, I could, if I have another couple of days, I'll figure it out. I said, listen, post the question out there and continue working the problem. Okay. And sure enough, he did. And about 2 hours later, he got a response. And the reason I'm sharing this is because the response solved his problem. But I'll never forget the guy's email address. And I'm sure it's not valid anymore. And who knows, the domain might not be valid anymore. But the guy's name was rodriguez@rocketranch.nasa.gov. And I looked to my programmer and said, you know what? Look, it took a rocket scientist to solve your problem. So the moral of the story is that it doesn't matter if we know it or not. What we need to do is find out who does and get that person involved. So if we're thinking about being a high performance organization, it's not what we can do individually or cannot do individually. It's not about ego. It's about getting things done quickly and efficiently. And if we don't know it, probably somebody else does. All you have to do is pick up the phone and reach out to them. So what's the rollout look like on a particular program? So we have value realized and we have a level of improvement on the vertical axes. And our level of effort looks something like this, with the improvement resource team being the parabolic curve in yellow. And the value that's being received is underneath. And every program starts off with great fanfare. Everybody's very enthusiastic. And the peril that exists in this fanfare is that curve at the very beginning is very steep, and people think that curve is going to go on forever and ever and ever. All right, and so progress on any of these programs is very, very quick at the beginning. We're harvesting the low-hanging fruit, and it doesn't matter if it's operational excellence or continuous improvement or anything that you're trying to accomplish. The very, very first efforts in that program is going to be very easy. I mean, think, it's springtime here. People are going out in starting to grow their gardens. Putting the shovel in the ground is easy. Putting the soil out there is easy. Planting the fruits and tending to the fruits and vegetables is not so easy. It takes a lot of time and effort over time. So the challenge is that we start telegraphing these amplified results that we realize at the very beginning as something that is going to go on forever and ever and ever. And you think about every bubble that's ever existed. The Great Recession we just got through a few years ago, and people thought that the value of their homes is going to go up in price 5 to 7% year on year forever. Forever is never as long as you think it's going to be. So eventually we reach a level of apathy and frustration sets in, but we're still making incremental progress. It just takes more effort. So what do we need to do? We need to remember that the Proverbs 16:18, pride goeth before destruction and haughty spirit before the fall. Don't let ego get in the way. It will be the source of your doom. Recognize what you don't know is a lot, and it always will be. I like to think that my network, one of my biggest strengths is my network, and I'm very, very much in touch with what I don't know. In fact, there was a commercial a few years ago. People probably saw it. I mean, the world's most interesting man. And the gentleman with the gray hair like me and a beard like me, sitting in a mahogany room with leather chairs, and it was on careers. The theme of the commercial is on careers, and it zooms into the world's most interesting man, and the interesting man looks at the camera and says, "Find out in life what you don't do well, and then don't do that thing." So it's not important to understand what it is that you do excel at. It's also important to understand what you do not excel at. Always question the wisdom when asked to engage in an undertaking. Question everything. And if you ever find yourself the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Remember that. I got that from my father. If you ever find that you're the smartest person in the room, you're definitely in the wrong room. And lastly, change your emphasis from the inputs to the outputs. Now, I see so many people saying that we need this, and we need this, and they think that feeding the inputs is going to generate some yet undefined output. In the operational excellence and Lean Six Sigma world that I'm in, I've seen many programs fail because they start off by saying, "I need 60 black belts, I need 200 green belts." My question is, what for? What are you going to do with these people? Don't build inventory unless you have a need. And what that inventory is not just an apparatus or product. That inventory is in capabilities also. You let the desired outputs create a pull on the required inputs. So if you wanted to know who I am and where to find me, that's me, Joseph Paris. My e-business card, I have a lot of platforms, so my e-business card will actually funnel you to all of them, and easiest way to find me is on LinkedIn. So thank you, gentlemen and ladies and audience in general.
Awesome.
And thanks for having me there, Jason and Mike. Thanks for moderating. It's really great to be here.
Well, thank you very much, Joseph. One of the first things that really came to mind for me is when you're talking about operationals, you're talking about the length of time. How important for operations is patience? How much does that play into either avoiding Mount Stupid or anything along those lines?
Well, they say haste makes waste, right? But to me, you have to be patient but pressing. There's no perfect time to make a decision, and there's no perfect plan. Those two things are fallacies. In fact, in the automotive world, my automotive brethren here, they talk about perfection. And my counter argument to perfection is, if somebody were to build the perfect car, it was perfect in every way, nobody would be able to afford it. So, when do you make that decision? When do you, how much patience should you have? You have patience until it runs out.
Great. And playing off of that, we have a great question from the audience, which is going off your point about the need for accelerated decision making. Do you think the space industry has been suffering from a bit of paralysis by analysis when if you consider SpaceX's success with their fail fast, fail often model?
Well, I absolutely agree with SpaceX's philosophy: fail fast, fail often, fail cheaply. You know, uh, when we think about the Apollo program, every experience, every mission was building on the experience of the previous mission and expanding upon it. I really truly believe that you could spend waste a lot of time and money overthinking things, and even the complexity of things. I mean, complexity kills. Um, and the simpler you can make it, oftentimes the better off it is.
Oh, perfect. And I think this might be something that you can answer, but let us know. Is what areas of the space supply chain do you see as creating the greatest impact, not necessarily the most profitable?
Well, the greatest impact, geez, if I was thinking about the supply chain, I'm probably going to think about material development. The materials necessary for successful space flight, and not just space flight. Aeronautics in general. You think about all the high tech materials that have come out recently. With carbon fiber, and one of the clients that I know of is Hexcel. The skins of the planes that they're creating. I think materials is probably the most important. Material development. All sorts of material development is probably the most important.
Great. Oh, there we go. And I was just to say, we were just out of questions, and then one or two just came in right at the last second here. So these operational, we got Remco Timmermans. These operational excellence programs are often very effective in large companies, but how would you implement some of these ideas in the startups?
Oh, that's an outstanding question, because everybody thinks that Lean and Six Sigma is got tremendous amount of overhead, or operational excellence has got a tremendous amount of overhead. Uh, Only if you're a purist. I know a lot of purists in the field, and they treat everybody as if they're supposed to be Toyota or General Electric. This is not true. Okay, what you have to think about is the scalability of your program and creating a corporate culture of collaboration. Okay, that's really what it comes down to. That collaboration. If you're a small startup company, start by making sure that everything is in its place. If for instance, I'm really crazy about this myself. I keep a lot of my files in the United States. Some of them are at my parents' house. I'm by the way here in Frankfurt, Germany. If I need a file, if I need a piece of paper from 10 years ago, I could tell my father over the phone exactly where it is, because that's exactly how organized I am. The idea here is that if you're organized, if you could just reach and what you need is there because it's supposed to be there, and they put the tool back. Anybody that's got young sons probably knows this. Your toolkit. How many people keep their toolkit locked because you need that darn screwdriver and it's missing because it's out in the yard because your kid was doing something with it. You know, Continuous improvement, operational excellence is not complex. In fact, the complexity is what will kill it. Think about the outputs. What are you trying to do? How do you become a better organization as an organization? And then do that. Don't worry about the belts. Don't worry about the certifications. Worry about common sense and doing things standardized, repeatably, efficiently.
Wonderful. Now we might have, if you can fit them in quickly, we'll see if we can get these last two questions fired off quick. So much has been commented on Malcolm Batteridge winners who subsequently failed. What are challenges of sustaining operational excellence, and how well correlated is it to financial business success?
Yeah, Malcolm Baldridge. My biggest challenge with all of these disciplines, and mind you, I have my own, north, true north, as in my definition. But when these disciplines become dogma, when they're followed unquestionably, when they think that they could be applied universally to all instances, this is where doom awaits. All right. So, there's a lot of great ideas. There's a lot of great concepts out there. They, by the way, are past tense. In other words, it's a body of knowledge that existed however many years ago. What we have to do is we have to take that knowledge, and it wasn't intended to be hermetized. It wasn't supposed to be carved in stone. It was supposed to, the continuation of the evolution of that body of knowledge was supposed to be continuous. Don't, just do what makes sense. Okay. I mean, just look around. The opportunities there. If you try to, fit that square peg in the round hole, you're just gonna fail. And you mentioned that so many of these companies have failed. They didn't fail because of there's a movie, Ray Kroc, about McDonald's. McDonald's brothers came up with a fantastic way to make a restaurant and make a burger very, very efficiently. They lost their business. All right. So it's not about the processes. It's about the entirety of the organization. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Joseph. We're now at a time there, but that was awesome. So if you want to get a hold of him, his information is right up there. And wow, that was a lot of great stuff. So thank you very much, Joseph.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having me, guys. Thanks a lot, gals.
So, did you enjoy that? It's eye-opening, isn't it? I love the lessons from Mount Stupid thing. He was going to do something about the OODA loop and messaged me, and I said, no, somebody else is probably going to talk about that. And wouldn't you know it, Dr. Marie Baja already did, who was the first speakers. So, if you're interested in watching the whole thing, I've got it up as a Thinkific course. You got to log in. It's free. I charge $10 for the public, but for you guys, since you're friends of JP, just walk on in. Set up a free account on Thinkific. You can enroll for the course for free with the link here and watch the whole thing. And so hop on over to Thinkific if you want to watch the rest of this stuff. Really great presentations, gives you a snapshot of what's going on in the space field and a little more about the operational excellence issues that they've got going on there, because I certainly talked about process problems that the space industry has, specifically in the small sat manufacturing field. In addition to that, I recommend you head over to the OpEx Society's website. There's a huge library of papers there and information, and it's free and it's open. You don't have to log in for that. Just go take a look. I'll link this stuff in the description below. Go check it out. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.